Hi, it's David Meerman Scott. I'm here in Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic. I'm with Mr. Frederic, who's the Director General of FUNGLODE, and who's going to tell us just a little bit about, can you tell us a little bit about the organization first?
Yes, the organization is a non-governmental organization. It's a foundation. It basically functions as a think tank. And we also have a graduate program, a master's program on government issues, School of Government, if you may call it that way, and a School of New Media, of New Communications Media.
Right, we know a lot about that, don't we?
Right, yeah, we try to learn a lot.
And we had the most fantastic dinner last night. We had dinner with the president of the country, President Fernandez, and one of the things that strikes me that's so interesting is how new media is becoming such an important part both of the Dominican Republic and of politics. And how did that come about? How did we get this idea that now we need to jump into the whole new media thing?
Well, in the case of the foundation, this was one of the things that we had in our agenda from the very beginning, because the person who founded this foundation, Dr. Leonel Fernandez, when he was the former president, it was the institution. When he was in government, he realized that all problems cannot be solved by one government,
yeah.
And sometimes there's many problems that won't be solved by even a sequence of governments. Right. And so he said, well, we need to create an institution. And when he went out of office back in the year 2000, he created the foundation to focus on those issues that are long-term, sort of create a think tank for the Dominican society to think out their problems and potential solutions. And one of the things that we found out was that the two weakest institutions in the country, and as a matter of fact in many countries, are the political institutions, parties, governments, congresses, whatever. People complain that they don't work for the people, and also the media. Mm-hmm. That people don't believe in the media, in the communications media, not that much as they did in the past. Anything in the newspaper years ago was accepted as truth. Nowadays, it doesn't mean anything that it comes out in the paper. So he said, these are the two major weaknesses. We should focus, and this is why we focus on School of Government and School of New Media, because those are two of the major weaknesses we have as a society, and therefore we want to reinforce that by generating thinkers, brains in those areas that over the long term will help the country turn those weaknesses into strengths.
And tell me, in a developing economy, how important is internet connectivity and cell phone coverage?
One of the first studies, one of the first research programs we had was precisely with Professor Sachs from Harvard. Now he's in Columbia, the Earth Institute, and it was on connectivity precisely because we saw that one of the advantages the country has, it has a good telecommunications technology infrastructure, and that's basic when you want connectivity, and that what you needed was more broadband, more internet connectivity, besides just plain telecommunications, phone, landlines, and such. And so we saw it as a very important issue, not only to support that as a policy, but also to get into that research and develop things, programs that would help expand and communicate the country. Because once you have people communicating to each other, it doesn't matter if if they live in the mountains or near the beaches. If they're connected, they're connected. It's a revolutionary thing for a fisherman to be connected. Right. And if he can be on a mobile phone fishing, in his little boat and talk to other fishermen and guide themselves to where the fishes are, it can mean more income just by being communicated.
And how about new media? What's the role of new media in all
Well, that's one thing we're trying to figure out because we know it's out there, we're involved in it, but it's something we cannot afford to let it pass and not be in it. So we have a policy, an institutional policy of having a little interest in each one of different media. Mm-hmm. We started with the traditional. We have an educational and cultural television and radio station that we're creating. We already have TV programs, youth the youth having programs and using this setting right here as a studio once a week. We're going to expand it to 3 hours a week and eventually 12 hours a day.
Mm.
And so, but that's the traditional. We said we cannot afford to be out of the new media.
Sure.
And so we're getting into several lines of social networks. You saw our virtual campus in Second Life.
Yeah.
We're experimenting. We have what we call a social cybernetic collaboratory.
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't even be able to say.
That's one of those things that means everything and doesn't mean anything. It's virtually, we're experimenting with different media,
Right.
see what works for us,
Yeah.
and some things work for some purposes, some things work better for others. We're trying to figure it out, because you can learn the ideas from the States or Europe, but some things that work there very well for a certain purpose might not work here, so we have to figure it out ourselves.
Last question is, we all have seen what now President Obama did with his campaign using new media extensively, and millions of supporters who followed him. What can the Dominican Republic and or Dominican Republic politicians learn from that?
I think they have a lot to learn, because up to President Obama's triumph and his use of social media and new media in the campaign, this was something that was maybe advised to the politicians, but they would not pay much attention.
Right.
Now they're giving it very serious thought. But I think it's not only the politicians that have to incorporate this into the culture. I think it's the media itself, the newspapers, the televisions. They have to see how they're going to adapt to these new times. And if they want to survive, they have to transform themselves by acquiring some of these capacities and developing them and reaching out for the people and
Right.
letting the people reach out to them.
Right.
So it becomes not a media of communication one way, but two-way media of communication, and develop what it really should be.
Thanks so much. It's
Thanks
great
to
be
you
here.
for being here with us these last 2 days. As you know, a lot of people enjoyed your
Yeah, it was good fun.
talk. It was very educational, but I think it was entertaining also, a lot of fun.
That's what I tried to do.
Yeah,
it was
no,
good
it
fun.
was
It was a
good.
great audience.
I think that whoever wasn't here and whoever hasn't watched it through television here is really at a major loss.
Thanks again.
Thanks to you.